you're a strategic thinker. And I think that right now, part of our job is to come up with solutions. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett, and I told you we had some great guests coming up on Market Shares here, and today is one of those days. Today I have my friend Omeed Salashoor in the studio with me, and as I thought about doing this podcast, it's been almost 2 years now since we started. Omeed was one of those guests that I always knew that I would have on at some point, and then he kind of spurred things along by calling me out on an episode that I had done saying that rates will never get to 9%. He sends
publicly.
Not publicly. True. It was private, but I took it personal. But he sent me a screenshot of the thumbnail from that episode and said, man, this sure didn't age well, did it? So I thought that, at some point in this conversation, we're going to put Omeed on the spot and we're going to have him make some rate predictions and he can see what it's like to throw it out there publicly, your thoughts are, and see where it goes. But you guys, I joke a little bit because, we're good friends, but this is going to be a great conversation. This is a good conversation for people in the mortgage or real estate business, or really just in any industry. Omeed's got a great story. He's a good friend of mine, and he's lived a great life both in and out of the mortgage industry and has a lot to share. And then we're also going to get a little bit, I think, tactical here towards the end of this conversation and talk about ways that we can really help people, in the home buying process. So let's just jump into your journey, Omeed, if you don't mind. Since I know a little bit about your background,
sure.
I'm just going to start with, first of all, you're a first generation immigrant to the United States. So
Generation zero, actually.
Generation zero, right? Yeah. You weren't born here. So maybe just quick backstory on, where you were born, where you grew up, how you found your way to the United States, and maybe a little bit about that journey. I think it's always interesting to hear people's stories around that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to see you and be in this amazing studio that you guys have put together. Nice job.
Thank you.
So background, yeah. So born and raised in Iran until I was 10 years old. I like to say I was, born in Iran but made in America, sort of thing. And so we moved to America when I was right around 10 and a half years old. And my brother was attending University of Washington out here in Seattle, so we came out here. And originally we were coming out here just to visit him for the summer, and then all the revolution and everything else broke out. We went back home, fixed some things, and came back and stayed. So now I've been in the U.S. now for, what am I, 54 now? So that would have been, 40 some odd years.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting thing for me to kind of grasp both sides of my culture, both my American culture and my Persian culture, and it's been an interesting thing to grow up in this country. I've had the good privilege of being able to create whatever it is that I wanted out of myself, which has been really cool to do for me anyway, and be able to see the opportunities that have been afforded and the things that I've been able to do while being here, because God knows what would have happened if we were still over there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I know that you had shared with me long back that when you were here, I think it was when you were visiting your brother, and, there's a picture of like a nice car, and, it seemed like really from the time you got here to the United States at a very young age, like you really felt like there was opportunity here. I don't know that everyone, has kind of the same vision at a young age, that success and kind of like the anything's possible kind of attitude. And I feel like you're a person who has always embodied that. Is that true? Is that a fair way of your perspective about the opportunities that were here? Or?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, certainly. I think we all have our doubts about things in life, and I'm no different. However, I think that I've always been, a half, cup half full guy.
Right.
And even, when we first got here and being able to see that there was opportunity at an early age, when I was 15, 16 years old, I think it was, 15 and a half years old, my father passed away. And so that was a very shocking event that kind of brings a young man and shakes him and goes, okay, here you go, you're on your own now.
Right.
And so because of that, I knew that whatever was going to happen was going to be left up to me to figure out. And so that is really, the part of being in this country and seeing the opportunity, and seeing that whatever the stoppages were, if you will, that was just in between my ears. That was in my own head, nowhere else.
Yeah.
Right. And I think to a certain extent, believing in that deep inside your heart makes the difference, because I know there's a lot of times that doubt creeps into all of us and we talk ourselves out of our greatness or out of what it is that we were meant to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. More often than not, I would say.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward a little bit to how you found yourself in the mortgage industry. Maybe give us a little bit of that backstory.
Yeah, I'll make it a super short one because you know
Perfect.
the full story. I grew up in a restaurateur household. My folks owned a small restaurant in downtown Seattle. And so from a very young age, I know that I wanted to own a restaurant and a nightclub and all this other stuff. That's what I wanted to do. When I was like 15, 16 years old, I wrote a big business plan about it. And, that's what I wanted. And so nobody took a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid seriously. I don't think they still do. And, well, they might now. But so I decided to go out and try to fundraise for this project. And nobody would give me the time of day, as you can imagine. And so then I found, kind of thought, where could I go where there was a people with a lot of, with money, where the people with money hang out? Well, banks. So I went and got a job as a teller so I could meet people that were, had wealth and had the opportunity to talk to them and all that, right? So that never occurred, but throughout that banking world, I realized that I had a natural kind of a gift for numbers and being able to speak with people and being able to problem solve and come up with solutions for people. So slowly in that banking world, I became a personal banker and started doing, HELOCs and FHA loans and selling CDs and all this other stuff, and then felt good about that and felt like I could do it. And then it wasn't until one night where I was in my manager's office looking for something else, and I saw the revenue books, and I thought to myself, man, they're making this kind of money on the revenue on these things, and they're paying me $5 for every HELOC that I sell. So in 1991, a business partner and I, a guy who used to also work at the bank, Bob and I opened up our first mortgage company off of the living room of his mother's house, called Advantage One Financial Group in Kirkland. And that was that. That's how we got into the mortgage business.
I love it. Well, always an entrepreneur, always looking for the opportunity, and made sure that you were at the front of the phone book, because the phone book was super relevant back then.
It was Advantage One Financial Group with the A and the one.
That's right.
And that's what you did. Yeah, there's a fair amount of luck and backwind to this whole story, Tony. And I think I've told you, but we got into the business, and we were two guys, and we had one or two refinances every other month or something like that. Because where did you get business back then?
Right.
And it wasn't until we came up with the idea of home equity loans and tapping into people's home equity, and we paid my nephews 10 cents each for each flyer that they would deliver, and they got on their bicycles and they delivered these flyers to all three of the houses. And consequently, at the same exact time, bond market took a huge dip, and rates overnight went from like 8.5 to 7.5, which was a very big drop back then. And then the phone would not stop ringing because of those little flyers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of ways of doing prospecting, and flyers. It might still work today. I don't know.
I don't know. I think.
Well, I want to go through the next part of your journey quickly, because I want to get to some other things. But so from there, I know without filling in all the gaps,
Sure.
you kind of found yourself, not only as a top producer, but then into some leadership roles in the mortgage business. Really, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but really at the time, the peak of your career, as far as what you were doing, running a big branch, the amount of money you were making, all of that seemed like it was really good on paper. And you decided that would be a great time to maybe take a step back and take a sabbatical from the mortgage business. So I've always found this fascinating about your story. And so maybe share with us what was going on then, why you took a step back. But I think another nugget that I learned from you is how you were financially in a position to be able to take a step back. And we've talked about your discipline around saving and investing, and the commitment that you and your wife made around, saving half of, every dollar that you make, et cetera, which put you in a position of freedom. I think weave that into kind of this story, because I think it's an important thing, and one of the most important things I learned from you over the years.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I think that so in a nutshell, it was a situation where I had achieved some things at a very high level at the branch management level, with volumes in excess of $500 million and 20 years ago, that meant something very, very big. It means something different today. But so that was a time where I think it was also, if I'm honest with you and our audience, it was a time of perhaps immaturity for me, because I was the Excel formula guy, right? I was the if this then that, right? So everything was a formula for me. So if I do this, then I'll be happy. Okay, I got there. All right, I'm not. If I do this, then I'll be happy, right? So it was this incessant search for that achievement, if you will. And so it got to a place where it was like, okay, well, I achieved this, and that's not where the holy grail is, so let's go look for that. So that conversation in my own head, plus talking to my wife and being in a position where we had been really diligent about savings, about being able to plan for our family and plan for the future and be smart about it, really got us to a place where I made the decision to walk away from that. It was a very hard decision because I was leaving at that point in time. That was my first Horizon family, and they were very much so a family to me. The good news is most all of them are back in my life today as I came back into production,
right.
and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So, moved away from that, and, we took some time off. We, got ourselves an RV. We traveled everywhere with the kids. That was a really cool, summer that happened. We were able to see a lot of stuff, and experience things with the kids when they were very little, and those memories are always very sweet. And then it got back to a point in time where I came back and I thought, okay, well, I'll start buying and selling homes and refurbishing and all that. I've always kind of done that on the side and
right.
thought I could do that for a full-time job. As it turns out, I'm not very good just being alone in a house with two other guys doing stuff. I need to be around other people. And so abandoned that idea. And really it was around that time of coming back into the industry when you and I met.
Yeah. So, and you were financially you were some of your best income earning years of your career at the time that you made that decision. Sounds like a lot of positives came out of it, a lot of clarity, time with your family, but obviously it changed the trajectory of your career at that
100%.
time. Looking back on that, was that the right decision? How do you feel about the decision you made at that time?
You bring up such a good point in that for a longest time in that decision, I was unsure about it. And now with maturity and age and years that have gone by, I realized that that was part of my journey. I had to go through that piece. Right? And the subsequent pieces after that part in order to be in a place of clarity and peace. And really what led me to come back into production were those experiences, right? To really realize what mattered to me personally, because everyone's got their own hot buttons.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and it's interesting, I think, in this industry, and I'm, you put me in this category as well, is that, we start out in, wherever we start out, and then we go into production, and then we go into, maybe a branch manager role, and then we want, we kind of ascend the ladder, if you will.
We're almost expected.
Yeah, almost expected. And it's almost like we don't even know why we're doing it. We just know that that's the next logical
Right.
step. And to us, that's, I think our industry kind of says, well, that's what the next level of success looks like. And so for you were able to kind of put a break in that pattern. But when you came back, when we worked together, you are our vice president of retail lending. So you were in a leadership role, and I think still had the desire to be maybe a little bit further away from production at that time. Right. You had a couple roles there, but then what was pretty surprising to me is that you did a complete 180 pivot and said, you know what, I don't think that leadership is necessarily where I want to be. Leadership meaning at a regional or branch level, but more I want to focus on production and running, leading a production team and getting back into production. And what I know about you is, and this is where, I think what we're going to share for the rest of this podcast will be so valuable. One thing that you were amazing at is coaching loan officers, giving them ideas, giving them strategies, helping them figure out where are you at, where do you want to go. And you spent so much time, at least when we worked together as a VP of sales, helping people try to build their business, and you find that almost none of them take action on the things that you recommend. And so what was amazing to me when you made the pivot back into production is what I saw you do from my perspective was put into place the exact things that you were telling other loan officers to do, and your career, that new chapter of your career, if you will, skyrocketed, and you instantly became a top producer amongst your peers, really a top producer in the region. And from what I could tell, it was really just by executing on the exact same things that you had been telling others to do for years. Is that an accurate read on kind of how that went down?
It's an accurate read, and I appreciate you saying that it was instant, but it really wasn't. I want to make sure
it looked instant
that
to
I'm
me.
honest about that, right? No, it wasn't instant. So, to your point, and yes, I think part of the thing that I was always searching after, Tony, I think I'm a teacher at heart, and I really enjoy teaching people who want to learn about different things. I find myself very attracted to that. And my attraction to the leadership and kind of climbing that ladder was a duality, right? Part of it was because, like we talked about, well, you're a great branch manager, you must be a good divisional. You're a good divisional, you should be a good regional, right? Whatever that is. And then on top of that, to be able to go, oh, okay, I know how to do this. Let me show you, so you can go and do it, and you can get your family to where you want to get your family.
Right.
But to your point, it was one of those things where, horse water and all that, and you can or you can't, right?
Right.
And so part of what led me on to the journey of coming back into production is really just that, is that, okay, well, I know what to do. I'm literally killing myself trying to make other people see it.
Right.
So let's not do that anymore. And let's be in a place where there is some control of destiny, if you will, and something that I can focus into a small team and move forward from there, right? And so January of 2016, came back into production, and that was after 13 years of not producing alone personally. Wow. And so there was all my database had been willed and bequeathed to other loan officers that I've had throughout the years. My realtors had all moved on, retired or otherwise, and all my builders were on to the next schmo who flowed sort of thing, right?
Right.
And so that was a really interesting thing to kind of start from ground zero, and
So let's settle here for just a minute, if we could.
Yeah.
So. And I get that, right? You're gone for 13 years. That would be like me going back to production, having originated alone since 2012. Where to even start? And I think this can be maybe some helpful. I'd love to hear kind of where you started, how you got back into it. I think a misconception that a lot of people have or could have from this story is, well, you have the experience. And I would argue that in this particular industry, we start over every single month. So it doesn't matter where you're at as a loan officer, when the next month rolls over, you and the guy in the office next to you are at the exact same starting point.
We'll say zero to hero, right?
That's right. That's right. And so I think that, the journey you went through, anyone could adopt, whether you're new or, look, I'll be honest with you, I know a lot of people that are in leadership roles that are finding that those roles are no longer available in our industry, right? We're in a shrinking, compressing industry. Some people might choose to get out of leadership because it's just, we've seen companies remove whole layers, right? Like every divisional is gone. Every regional is gone. Right. We've seen those things happen.
Some companies, all branch managers
all branch managers might be gone, right? So we are seeing middle management positions eliminated from our industry. So whether someone finds themselves in that situation and is contemplating going into production and, like you said, controlling your destiny, or maybe someone who's just newer to the mortgage industry, I think this is relevant. Maybe walk us through, how did you start? How'd you get some traction going again? I don't want to spend too much time here, but I think there's some nuggets that people could take away from how you went about doing that.
Yeah. I wish I had a magic pill to tell you, but there really isn't. I went back to absolute boots on the ground guerrilla warfare tactics of real estate. I started, showing up at different people's open houses over the weekend. I started to track different realtors to see what they're doing and how they're doing it. I started going and visiting builders and finding out where they were at a certain time and showing up.
This sounds pretty basic, Omeed.
Pretty basic, sir. Yeah. So again, no magic bullet, right? It was just a matter of really having a very succinct schedule that I followed, right? Whether it was the old school, Friday calls out to everybody that if you're working, I'm working, pick up I'll pick up my phone. I've got you programmed in my phone. And the guy's like, well, who is this guy? I don't even know this guy, right? And then on Mondays following back up and saying, hey, anything happen over the weekend that you need me for? I didn't hear back from you, right? This level of kind of forward-leaning work is very uncomfortable for people. I know this because guess what? It's uncomfortable for me.
Right.
Right? If there's a person ever out there that tells you that they don't have sales call reluctance, they are lying to you. Everybody has it, right? Being brave isn't the absence of fear.
Right.
Right? And so the fear is still there, but we just got to push through it.
So if you don't like doing it, why'd you do it?
Yeah, because I think I had something to prove to myself. I think I was in a space where I wanted to show that to myself that everything that I had been talking about and teaching over the years was accurate. And don't get me wrong, it took a ton of different adjustments along the way, right? I took off from Seattle heading to New York, and I found myself in Texas.
Right.
Right. But I didn't land the plane and go back to Seattle. I just churned. So I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I can give anybody is really be in a place where you're okay to pivot.
Yep.
This didn't work left. This didn't work right. It is that rat in a maze thing, and that nobody can beat a rat that won't give up.
Yeah.
And so it's that thing.
So it seems to me, just based from my perspective, without knowing all your numbers and stuff, I mean, I think that you had pretty amazing success pretty quickly. I don't know if you want to get into kind of what those numbers look like over those first couple of years of re-entry into production, but you found yourself really focused on new construction, working with builders, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So working with builders was kind of a natural for me. I worked for, back then, Stafford Homes, and then turned into D.R. Horton, if you remember, or CH, Continental Homes, DHI, right? So D.R. Horton, I worked for D.R. Horton as their branch manager here in Washington, and then I became we opened up different branches throughout the state and all those things. And so I really enjoyed that portion of the job. It was really a neat experience to be able to do that. But having that experience of working directly for the publicly traded builder really taught me what the builder went through and what they needed. And then I was able to really succinctly boil that down to the builder who's, building and closing 15, 20, 30 houses a year. Because that builder still needs those same services and that same understanding from their finance partner, but they don't have access to it.
Right.
Right. And so that was a natural thing for me to get after. It was also a natural thing for me to be able to understand and provide to our realtor partners that at the end of the day, it isn't a push button get mortgage. There is no one size fits all. I don't care what the commercial says. Everyone is different. And we all absolutely have the fiduciary and finding out what is different about that person and serving that need.
Right.
Right. And not everybody buys into that. Not everybody is a good values match for that level of thinking. Right. And so there was a lot of, kissing frogs to get to the princess sort of thing, and being able to find somebody who speaks that love language and it matters to them as much as it matters to me. Right?
So did you find yourself in a lot of like backup positions to other lenders who had maybe already had the relationship, and then you were able to kind of burrow your way in and then become the preferred?
Yeah, for sure. In any of these conversations, I always share with people, I'm like, look, we don't know each other, and you don't know what the experience is like until we try. Right. And so certainly don't let go of your current relationship. Hang on to that. If there's value that I can bring, let's have one together, and you can compare and contrast. And if your current relationship is great still, wonderful, fantastic. I'll be in the back. If that guy ever goes on vacation or you can't get a hold of him, call us.
Yeah.
Right? I can be the junkyard dog, no problem.
Yeah. But I mean, this is mortgage scripting 101. This is really basic stuff.
It really is basic stuff.
It's just doing it.
It's painfully basic. As I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, come on, you're going to say that?
It works. Weird how that, success leaves clues. We've talked about that on this podcast. Okay, so what percentage of your business over the next couple of years do you think was new construction builder type business?
Over the last couple of years?
Yeah.
Probably we started out, so the first year when I came back, we went from 0 to 32 million in fundings. That was
so that would be considered like,
it was good.
Pretty mean. Yeah.
But what was funny is that everyone around me at that time, if you remember, rates were good.
Right.
And so everyone around me was doing a fair amount of refinances.
Right.
I didn't have a book of business.
Right.
So I was at that point, and I think we still are, clearly north of 85, 90% purchase business.
Right.
Right. If you look at all of my production since 2016. And so, here's hoping for the next down market. So we can do
now you got a database, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Now we have a database. And so, Yeah. So I think the first year it was in that 32 million zone, and then the next year it really kind of started popping and going heavier. So I think this next year was 55, then it went to 78. Then for the previous few years, it's all been in that 99 to 101 million dollar range.
Yeah.
So it's been a really, really good run, and certainly 2021 and 2020. I mean
Yeah.
a phenomenal.
But you were
years.
still doing mostly purchase when everyone else was doing refi.
I was really doing all purchase.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
I think
incredible.
I think the last time we measured it in aggregate, I'm at 92%.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. The other thing I made a really, really conscious decision to do is that I was the guy who'd been 30 years in the business that now nobody knew of.
Right.
And so to be able to get our footprint back out to how people know people today, i.e. the web,
Right.
there was a real succinct push to get ourselves into a space and a place where we were, highly rated and would show up on different searches and everything else. And we've been able to do that.
So is that like Zillow and?
It is, yeah. So in that time spent, we're now at 298 5-star reviews on Zillow.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And then did you use like Google My Business, the Google
all
Analytics?
Those, all those things are tied into each other. But very, very honestly with you, I think if I had 100 Google or Zillow leads, I have closed one. They have not been anything that's been real.
So what's the value then of having the ratings? Is it just
Great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's public feedback.
Yeah.
It's hey, don't take my word for it.
Right.
Right.
It's validation.
Because I'm a walking commercial for me.
Right.
Right. Go talk to these people.
Right.
Right. And so we're now starting down the pathway of video testimonials with some of our clients, and those will be coming up on our websites and everything else because I feel like that's important.
So is what you're saying is you're not getting a lot of leads from Google or Zillow, but people, you can point to that as, social proof that, I'm the right person to work with. Correct. Because these people thought I did a great job.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so I think there's a lot of folks in this business, and I know that both you and I are going to get some phone calls after saying this, that they swear by the Zillow and they swear by the Google ads sort of thing.
Right.
That they actually get clients and they close them. Wonderful. Good. Great. Keep doing it.
Right.
My experience hasn't been that.
Yeah. You'll take the reviews every day and then
I'll
point
take the
people
reviews
to them.
every day. I'll take the reviews every day. And again, it's those attaboys. We all live for it, man.
So do you have a strategy with your borrowers to encourage them to leave you a review?
For sure. No, we start out that way, right? During the initial consultation. So even at this level of production that we've been able to have, I do every initial consultation myself.
Okay.
Every application they take over the web, but it comes directly to me for review first. Then we have every lock conversation of whether we should be locking and floating, all the reasons why, but it's your choice and here's the information. That's done by me. And at the very end of the transaction, here's what I promised you and here's what I delivered to you, that's done by me.
Got it.
Right.
So you got kind of like 4 touch points.
I've got 4 very emotional, high emotional touch points that I'm around. And during those times, I ask, no different than your waiter who brings the food to the table and comes back and sees if it's okay. Hopefully not right after you took your first bite.
Right.
But making sure that they're okay throughout the transaction, right? And then off of that feedback of, oh my God, this has been the greatest thing since sliced bread, thank you very much, I start to ask for, and I said, hey, it's really important for us that other people are able to have the interaction that you did and the comfort level that you have. So, can I count on you when the time is right to jump on there and leave us a review?
Yeah.
And, everybody says yes. Not everybody does it.
Right.
But everybody says yes. And then we have other methodology that we follow up with them and try to push and pull. The pull-through rate, I wish it was more because obviously there'd be a lot more reviews, but I understand it. I get it. People get busy and, it's just at the end of the thing and see you later, bye.
Right.
But they also vote for their pocketbook. Something happens, they want to buy a new house, et cetera, they're always coming back now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, this is like a master class on the basic things that you can do to build a mortgage practice. So I hope everyone's taking notes. All right, so let's transition a little bit as we kind of get towards the tail end of this.
Sure.
I want to talk about the biggest challenge that I feel like, and I know that I believe you feel like is impacting home buyers today, and it's affordability.
100%.
Here we are up in the Pacific Northwest. Average home price in King County,
878.
878. Interest rates, they've come down a little bit now, but peaked out at around 8%, have come back down now. But oh my gosh, I mean, if you're a first-time home buyer, I mean, and you're trying to find a home for your family, and the average price is, you know, 878, and interest rates pushing almost 8%. You know, affordability has to be the biggest challenge for people. So I'd like to talk a little bit about, as a strategic thinking loan officer, which I would say that you absolutely are, you know, creative, strategic, coming up with ideas. What sort of things have you come up with to help buyers with this challenge? And then what sort of strategies are you maybe sharing with the builders where they can say, hey, you can help people solve this challenge if they buy your homes? Is there some ideas there that you can share on either of those fronts?
For sure, yeah. So really at the top of this, Tony, is the idea of learning how to reverse engineer a transaction, right? One of the things that I found throughout the years is buyers are very excitable, and our real estate partners do a great job of showing and all the features and benefits of the home, et cetera, so they get very, very excited and they write. And then they go home and they talk to, you know, Uncle Joey, who bought a house in 1992, and tells them this is not the right time or a good time to do it.
Right.
And they get talked out of it. And part of that occurs because of the fact that they're not necessarily ending up with the end result that they want, right? You and I have talked about this 1,000 times with one another, in that, you know, when we drive back past the Porsche dealership, it doesn't say buy this turbo from $250,000. It says lease it at $26.99.
Right.
Right? Because at $250,000 you scared the bejeebers out of me. I'm never coming. At $26.99, I'm a player. Let's go.
Right.
Right. And so I think being able to treat the clients with the same mindset, and that, hey, at the end of the day, what payment would you like to have? What cash to close do you need to have? These are very, very important things to somebody who's trying to buy a house, right? The 3 questions I ask everyone, quick takeaway for anyone who cares to take it. You know, how do you feel about this payment? Can you go to sleep at night, right? Number 2 question, how confident are you in your job? And if you lost it, could you pick up another one within a matter of 2-3 months? And number 3, and this is also really important, especially in this type of environment, are you going to stay in this house for the next at least 3 years?
Right.
Right? Because each one of those things, if you answer no to, has a huge ramification of whether you should be buying or not.
Right.
Right?
Wait, so what you're saying, it sounds like, is you're actually helping people understand the risk of home ownership if something were to not go as planned in their future. That could cause them to maybe, you know, go into foreclosure or something like that. That seems like, you know, maybe not something that every mortgage professional is doing who's focused on trying to sell that transaction that's in front of them.
Well, again, you know, this goes back to what we talked about earlier, is that we are 1,000% obligated for fiduciary. We just are.
Yeah.
Right? And not everyone should buy. And I know that just eked out everybody who's watching this. Not everyone should buy.
Right.
Right? If there's somebody that is, you know, in Seattle and they know that their job deployment's only for 1 year, you know, that's going to be a risky play for them if they buy now and then try to sell at their end of the year.
Yeah.
I don't care what kind of, you know, massive projection you've had, right? You're going to write a check for this thing to walk away.
Well, I think not only are you doing a service to your client by asking them those 3 questions,
Yeah.
you're also subconsciously letting them know that your well-being is more important to me than this transaction is.
Right.
And that alone goes a long way to getting 5-star reviews, right? It changes the feeling of your customer. And I'm sure that, you know, you're self-aware enough to know that that's what's happening. But I think for the audience listening, you got to realize that, you know, how your borrower psychologically feels about the huge amount of debt you're looking to put them into. If they feel like you care more about this transaction closing than how this is going to impact them and their family over time, especially when you're queuing in on, you know, the things that could potentially happen in their future, and have they thought about that, that goes a long way, I would think, for people. Before we started this conversation, Omeed, you gave me an example of a buyer
Right.
who actually turned out they were buying new construction, and the opportunity to meet their goals was actually achieved by paying a little bit, you know, buying a little bit bigger home,
house.
a bigger
Yeah.
house. So maybe if we can pop up on the screen this scenario, I'd love you to maybe walk through the logic here and how this might be a little bit counter to what most people might think.
Yeah, for sure. So we met this Sweetest couple in the world. Young couple, probably in their late 20s. No children yet, but they were in a place where their lease was coming due, and they were paying quite a bit of money for the lease, and the exact amount, I believe, was $4,100.
Okay.
And they felt really comfortable paying $4,100, but they were also very, very conservative and trying to correct some things in their credit from the past, right? So they came to us, and the challenge really was they had a sub 680 credit score. They had limited down payment of only $20,000. They wanted to have a $25,000 down payment, but my suggestion was we need a rainy day fund here. We can't have you put all your money in there, so let's not do that. They did have some 401ks and things like that were in the background that they could pull, God forbid something emergency happened, so we felt okay about that. They had to stay under $4,100 a month. That was their magic number. Come hell or high water, that's what they wanted. And also,
and that's what they were paying in rent. So
Correct.
really looking to like not increase their payment.
Correct,
Okay.
right? Because I feel like they felt that they were pushing that.
Okay.
Now, their DTIs, I think, were 38 and change, but obviously, food and this and that, and the next thing all.
No one knows their budget like the
Exactly.
borrower.
No one knows their budget like the borrower. So at the end of the day, there was probably the biggest challenge here was that my main breadwinner, money earner, had less than 6 months on their current job, and they had worked several smaller jobs that had nothing to do with their own field, so that wasn't going to fly by, especially off of FHA.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we structured this, and when they'd walked into the site, and they'd seen a $525,000 house that they liked. Right, and that was going to get them in with a 3.5% down payment on an FHA loan at $18,375. The rate at that point in time was $799, and their PITI was going to be $4,516. That blew them out of the water. Right. Their agent was smart enough to notice some of the things that we were doing in a different location in the same site. So one home was a 2-bedroom with no promotion, facing a different way. Then there was a bigger home with a 3-bedroom. Corner facing the right way, and that's where the promotion was.
Okay.
Right? Now that home was $569,000. So to these folks, if I'm going to buy $525 and have a $4,500 payment, how am I going to afford $569? There's
Right.
no way. Now, so there was a builder promotion on this product at $34,000. That's what the builder promotion was.
Okay.
Right? So we took that $569, we reverse engineered it into a rate of 6 1/8. Okay, I could have gone way less than that, but at 6 1/8, I had enough money left over to pay for all their closing costs and all their prepaids.
Okay.
Yeah. So then their PITI MI all totaling came up to $4,158, which was
Right
within
there.
$58, right?
Right.
Now, we hadn't even had the conversation of now you're going to be able to itemize your tax returns instead of take the standard and this, that, and the next thing. And so your payment's actually going to physically be less than that if you wanted it to be, but
Correct.
we left that alone for the time being. Cash to close was delivered at $20,235,
Wow.
right? And these folks had a monthly saving of $358 over the cheaper house with the higher rate and everything else. But probably this is the biggest kicker. They walked into the site looking for a $525,000 home. They walked out with a $569,000. However, they paid the same payment as a $508,000 home.
Wow.
Right? So win-win-win across the board, and this is an example of what can happen when there's a concession of sorts. But again, if we do this in resale, you have a buyer that walks in and they see a 780 house and they offer 770 for it, and they high-five each other because we've all been taught,
Right.
you better get a good deal.
That's right.
Right? That 10 grand ended up saving them what, $62 a month?
Right.
Right? Dinner for one, no drink.
Right.
Right? Versus being able to grab that same equivalency, buy it down somehow, either, if there's within the budget, figure out a 2-1 and or a permanent buy down, which is what they needed in order to be able to qualify.
Yeah.
Right? And so that can be done. This is not just, hey, this is the only way and it's only new construction. Not at all.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, I just sold a home that I did a renovation on, and
Yeah.
I came off the price by $50,000 from what they offered. I mean, they could have came down 10,000, used the other 40,000 to do a strategy like this. I mean, those opportunities are out there. I would say that, at the time we're doing this, here we are at the December of 2023. I mean, here in the winter months, if there's a time to negotiate prices, now is it. Especially with builders as they wrap up year end and want to get under contract before the end of the year, perhaps. So anyway, I love that story. And what this shows to me, Omeed, is that, you're a strategic thinker. And I think that right now, part of our job is to come up with solutions. And especially when you're working with builders that are saying, hey, look, I have this plat. I don't necessarily want to lower the price of my homes. Maybe it's a little bit softer because of the time of year, but I need strategies, ideas to help move our inventory.
Right.
It's ideas like this that you can come up with that show people that whether or not they end up doing this specific scenario or not, it shows that you're an out-of-the-box thinker. It shows that you are in this with the seller, with the builder, whomever it may be, and helping to come up with strategies. And at the same time, we're helping solve people's biggest challenge, which is affordability and getting a payment that they can live with by utilizing, some of the seller's funds or whatever in order to do that in a smart way.
For sure.
What other ideas can you think of, if any, offhand, where, we're able to help people in this market get a payment that they're comfortable with?
Well, so we only have 3 levers to throw, right? The length of time that we finance something, the interest rate, and how much we're borrowing. So you can only throw these 3 levers to be able to figure out what's going on, right? And so for anyone on the call who's wanting to reproduce something like this, the only advice that I really have for them is, like you said, do think outside the box, right? Don't talk yourself out of your greatness. There is going to be, you never know until you ask. Right? And so this idea of being able to reverse engineer the offer back into what makes the buyer happy and what makes them sticky to the file, that's really where we bring value for people. Because at the end of the day, they can log on to any of these websites and get a quarter point lower than anything that anybody on this call is telling them.
Right.
Right? So it can't just be about that quarter point.
Right.
And for some people, it absolutely is. Right? Because
Sure.
there's no value proposition that is meaningful to them. And that's simply not my guy.
Right. And you're not going to win every deal.
What do you mean?
No, absolutely. So I have to imagine, this is a kind of a complex strategy. Do you use a tool like Mortgage Coach or some other version thereof to show options to borrowers?
For sure. Yeah, we're heavy Mortgage Coach users. We're heavy users of all the modules on MBS Highway.
Okay.
I think it's important for us to know our trade and our craft. I spend a lot of time actually reading.
Yep.
I read a lot of stuff, and so I'm trying to constantly come up with either ideas for myself or a better understanding for myself. So when somebody asks that question about, wait a second, I had a builder ask me this just last night. He called me at home at 7:30, and he's like, what's going on with the 10-year T-bill? And why is it behaving the way that it is? And why is it that we're not seeing it yet in mortgage-backed securities?
Right.
That's actually a great question from a builder's perspective to be asked.
Right.
Right? And had I not known what I know, I would have sat there and just stared at them.
Right.
Right. And so I think again, really kind of master's class in the basics, like you said earlier.
Yep.
We got to know our craft.
Yeah. Well, not only do some loan officers not know how to answer that, they don't think that it's important that they even learn those things. They go, what does that have to do with what I do for a living? And, when you're working with builders or you're working with realtors, I don't think you can underestimate. I'm sure this is part of the reason why you had such, quick success is because you're a professional. You approached it as, you had experience. You don't have to have 30 years of experience in the mortgage business to come across as a professional. But you do have to have the mindset of I'm going to be a constant learner. I'm going to understand the market, and I'm going to approach this as as a professional, not just a person who's winging it, trying to be a salesperson to close another transaction. That's not the process, for success, especially in the challenging market that we have today. And you've done a fantastic job of that. Okay, so let's wrap this up. So, I put out a podcast a while back, and I said, look, and I got to be honest with you, I did not think rates would go to 8%. I said, there's no way mortgage rates are going to go to 9%. And at the time, we had, who I think is like your twin on the internet, Patrick Bet David, being one person who I called out. And I love his podcast, by the way. But, there was a lot of people out there. And I said, look, there's a lot of doomsdayers on YouTube saying rates are going to go to 9% plus. And at the time, rates had come up a little bit from from the very lows of the high 2s, low 3s, but we were nowhere near 9%. But as we quickly, raced up, and as you just mentioned, even with that scenario, rates were close to 8% here not that long ago. I think that I'm going to stick by my prediction. We're not going to 9%. I don't think they're going significantly higher, at least not in this cycle. Yeah. I think it's possible that whatever the Feds do next could potentially, if they don't do it right, lead to a rebound of inflation, and then how we solve for that problem the next go around. Anything is on the table. But this cycle, I think we've peaked out. But I'd love to have you to the camera,
staring at
the camera. We want to memorialize the date here. No, but seriously, I'd love to know your thought on what rates are doing. You don't have to give a solid prediction if you don't want to. I'm done doing that. But but I would like to know, what do you think rates are doing? I mean, they've come down a little bit. We're probably in the mid to low 7s right now, depending on points and what you're doing and product and all that stuff. Where do you think rates go in 2024? And do you think that, like a lot of people are hoping for, that we are, going to see a little refinance opportunity next year? All these people that are dating their rate are going to get to refinance that, or is this a little bit more of a long run, you think, and we're going to see elevated rates in the 7s throughout the next 12 to 24 months? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, if I knew that, I'd be on a beach somewhere right now. I will tell you this, from what it is that I can see. I think there's a few things that are at play. First of all, the Fed never ceases to amaze with what looks to be the lack of understanding of really what's happening. And so they keep on talking, it was just yesterday one of the Fed governors says that we need more rate hikes.
Right.
I think it's interesting that there's so many kind of opposite voices right now at the Fed, which gives me a little bit of hope. And I think that they are trying to maneuver this giant, cruise ship as they would a speedboat. And it's just not going to work that way. And I don't know why they don't realize that if, we realize that. Having said that, I don't think that even if they start to turn rates down, that in and of itself can be inflationary. Right. So it can't be this thing where they go up, and oopsies, down, because we'll just keep ping-ponging. What doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me right now is the credit card usage that's out there, now over $1 trillion.
It's crazy.
That is surprising, but if you really kind of think about the level of wealth that has been created in the last few years in multiple facets, is it that surprising? Maybe not, because those credit card balances go up and hopefully people are paying them back down. We don't have evidence of that. But what's also amazing is, pick any Tuesday night and go out to downtown Bellevue and try to find a table.
It's packed.
Right? So people are actually spending money. I mean, it's doing that, right? Just a simple meal can now be $75 for two, right? So as that continues, that will compress and compress and compress, and either people will have to use that credit or they will have to not go. Right? So hopefully they'll start not going so things can slow themselves down some. Now, saying all that to say that I'm hopeful that the Federal Reserve doesn't necessarily go back and start churning the Fed funds rates down overnight again and again and again. Whereas if they go back to their balance sheet and start to gobble up some of this money that's out there, right, that would probably be the smartest thing that they can do. Right? And so now they can add that back to their balance sheet. That addition of buying mortgage-backed securities back into their fold will naturally settle rates down.
So leave rates where they're at, but maybe go back to some version of quantitative easing.
Completely.
Okay.
Right? And so quantitative easing in the fact that just let's go back into the marketplace and now you become the buyer.
Because they've been a seller of mortgage-backed securities and treasuries for quite some time now.
Great point.
Yeah.
So at this point now, if they're a buyer of mortgage-backed securities, because in the past they have bought mortgage-backed securities and they've lowered and they've eased.
Correct.
Right, all across the board.
Throw
and
everything
we got
at it.
2 7/8 and let's go. Right.
Exactly.
So I don't think we're going to see rates anywhere near that. What I will tell you, and we'll go on camera so you and I can connect again. By end of second quarter 2024, high sixes.
Okay.
high sixes, I think will be where we're going to be at, because again, where the positioning of that 10 years now is because of a lot of the shorts that have now been called and have performed themselves.
Right.
That's why you're seeing such a detriment to the level of flow of money.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not coming over to mortgage-backed securities because the traders realize what that is.
Yeah.
Right. So almost artificially, it's gone down, if you will. And so I think that over the next little while, as things start to slow down, we should be able to get somewhere in the high sixes.
Yeah, which is probably 50 to 75 basis points lower than we're at right now.
Sure.
Somewhere in that
Yeah.
neighborhood.
I think the other thing that I really hope and implore people that are at Fannie Mae to do is to really take another look at their LLPAs. Because that's really what's just, it's crushing people right now.
Yeah.
You know, the rate starts out great. By the time I add 2 7/8 to it because of, 2 or 3 things.
Well, and it's exacerbated by the fact that there's no premium pricing right now.
Correct.
The higher coupons, especially in a decreasing interest rate environment, the higher coupons are losing value. Like the 7.5, stopped trading the other day. I mean, it's just gone.
Nobody wants it.
No one wants it, and so it makes it very difficult to then absorb, any of these LLPAs because the investors want their money up front, and buyers don't have that. And it's not just your investment properties and your second homes. I mean, those are atrocious, but it's also, just the FICO score adjustments. It's the condo adjustments. It's the things that are supposed to be intended to help, create affordable housing opportunities. And yet they're, you're paying more for that. So,
does seem like a Fannie money grab more than anything else.
A little bit does.
It's a little old me. I don't know nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that can help rates is I love what you said. I'd love to see the Fed go back to, at least maybe stop selling. Maybe they purchase some mortgage-backed securities. I think in particular what I'd like to see go down is the spread between the 10-year and the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. I mean, it's up around 3%. It should be closer to 2%. Yeah. So if we could get that 100 basis points out of there, which I think the Fed could influence that by changing their stance on purchasing mortgage-backed securities to bring the liquidity back to that market, perhaps. But if we can close that gap and then see the economy just start slowing down and naturally see things come down, we could get below 6. I think would be huge. Does it happen by the middle of next year or whatnot? Probably not. I think you're probably safer in the high 6s. But getting a rate with a 6 handle, man, you get into a 5 handle, and I think it's Katie bar the door. I think the market takes off. Yep. I am in the camp that. I think home values, I mean, I just saw Case-Shiller numbers came out this week. FHFA, they're all up, anywhere between the lowest is 3.5% year over year, as high as 6-7% appreciation in 2023. Right. So I think, the fourth quarter is going to maybe, bring that down a little bit, which could be a great opportunity to purchase. But man, if rates come down, it's my prediction that things just spool up again.
Oh my God, there's 550,000 people waiting on the sideline with checkbooks ready to run back in here as soon as you see 5.5 and below.
Yeah.
So certainly I think to advice to any home buyer or future home buyer watching this for anything is really figure out a way to be able to buy now, because you have options, you have choices. Yeah. Right. And this idea that there's a national real estate market is so false, although this is the narrative that every media outfit pushes. Right. I was watching Good Morning America the other day, and it was when the mortgage bonds had tanked 45 points, 3 days in a row, and they're like lowest mortgage rates in 2 years. Yeah. And that's just not true. Right. So be careful out there, and really, if this is the time for you, and if you can figure out a way to buy a house now, because like you said, once there's a 5 handle in front of that thing, there's going to be people, signing offers on top of car hoods again. Yeah. And then, stabbing each other's eyeballs out to get to the front door first.
Yeah. I mean, there's a housing shortage issue, and that's not going to change overnight, or anytime soon. No. So I don't see a situation where, unless rates got so low that it unlocked people's ability to leave their current mortgages. Correct. Then you could see potentially a supply issue. Correct. and then maybe the economics are different. But I just don't see that. I don't know what could possibly happen that would push rates down to that level.
Yeah, so I agree with you, but I think a life change on behalf of the people that are sitting in that house that they bought for $800, which is now worth 1.5, and the guy's got a 3% mortgage on it. A life change is really the only thing that's going to force him out. Right. Right. I agree. Because for him to jump up into a 7.5 rate, take his winnings, but guess what? Now. you're going to want that much bigger of a
But if
house.
somehow rates did come back to 3%, maybe that person's ready to downsize now and they could do that.
Totally.
Where right now we don't see any of that.
Totally.
So that could change it, but I just don't see how that could possibly happen. And anyways, that could be a whole nother, we'll have another conversation if that happens. Well, you guys, thank you for your time and attention today. Look, you know, we love making this content. And I would ask you that if you got value in this, as I mention every time, sharing this with someone in the mortgage or real estate industry helps me out the most. Just letting someone know about market shares. Obviously, we love to grow our subscriber base. It makes sure that you see these episodes as they come out. I have a couple more really cool episodes coming in the near future that I think are going to really help people, some great interviews. So you're not going to want to miss those. So like and subscribe. But more than that, tell someone about this. Omeed, thanks. I'm glad I finally got you on. This was an awesome conversation.
It was awesome.
Congrats on all your success.
I appreciate you.
And I value our friendship
Same
and
here.
look forward to it continuing for years.
Appreciate it.
All right, brother.
Yes, sir.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.